Yep, that too.
All right.
Yeah. I think we may be on live. Hold on, let me see. Oh yeah, we're live, so you can start sharing. As everybody prepares to get on, it's on my page now, so we can hit the share button. Sharing is caring. You all can still hear me, right? All right, great. All right.
I don't see that we're live.
So we're live. I'm looking at us now.
Okay.
So go on my page.
Okay.
Everybody, just bear with us as we get our Zooms together.
Katie Linda, you have so many pages. I don't know which one to hit.
Well, hit them all. Hit them all. Yeah, we have 19 viewers right now, so we're definitely live.
Okay, so
we're live, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome.
You start using your radio voice.
Correct.
Edwin, do you see us?
Yeah, I can see everybody, except I don't see.
You share it on your page? I just tagged you.
Huh?
Did you share it on your page? I just tagged you.
I just shared it from your page.
Oh, okay. So it's on your page twice. All right. Well, yeah, that does it.
Yep.
Okay. Edwin, do you see us?
Yeah, I can see everybody except for Chuck right now. I saw him earlier though.
I think somebody has their phone down. So if you turn your phones down, I think that's where you're getting at.
That's my phone.
The echo. Oh. That's your phone.
I see him now.
All right. Hey. Whew. Hey, everybody. Thank you all for joining the Legal Edition Part 2. This is Kitty London, host and creator of the People of Power Show. And every week, I sit down with movers and shakers, CEOs, entrepreneurs, some celebrities, people who are just doing amazing things. And I titled this series as Unarmed and Dangerous. We all know about all the craziness and madness that's going on in the world. And unfortunately, it is primarily affecting Black people, African American, whatever you want to call it, people of color, minorities, people who look like us on this live tonight. So we have some things that we want to talk about, but I know people have raised concerns saying that this is all we do is talk, but we want to make sure that there's a call to action after this discussion. And if you have any questions, concerns, if you have anything that you want to add to the conversation, this is your opportunity to talk, because you have key officials on here tonight. You have Celesia Smith Gordon, please wave your hand. You have the chief of Delray, Javaro Sims, please raise your hand. You have an activist, community activist. Let you all do some introductions. Can you hear me? Am I going in and out?
No, you good.
Okay. Mayor Masters is on there. We have another attorney, Edwin Ferguson, and Mr. Charles Ridley, AKA Chuck Ridley, who's been doing a lot for the community. So I want to just give you all the opportunity to let people know as what you do here, so they'll have your contacts and information. So we're going to start with the lady, Miss Celesia Smith Gordon.
Good evening. Good evening. I am indeed Celesia Smith Gordon. I am a local lawyer within our community. My area of concentration is personal injury litigation, but I am indeed a justice lawyer. My intent is to empower us and fight for justice that we deserve, that's fair justice and equal justice. I am a community advocate, and I am very happy that Kitty London invited me on this show today. We have a lot to talk about.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to go over to the man in the uniform, Mr. Javaro Sims. Can you please just introduce yourself and tell us who you are, what you do?
Hello, everyone. I'm Javaro, Chief of Police for the Delray Beach Police Department, with over 27 years of experience. Please, honored to be up on the
panel. I lost audio.
We hear you. Chief, you okay?
Oh, fine.
We lost part of your audio. And Kitty London, you're on mute.
Oh, that will help, won't it? You know what? Zoom is, we're learning. Okay, Senator Bobby Powell, since you're not on mute, please let us know who you are and what you do.
Thank you so kindly. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, I am State Senator Bobby Powell Jr., representing Senate District 30 in Palm Beach County. I am the chairman of the Florida Legislative Black Caucus and a member of the Senate Democrats when we go to Tallahassee, one of 40 senators and one of 6 Black senators, 5 Black males, 1 Black female. I'm proud to be on this Zoom Live with all of these great dignitaries. Born and raised in Riviera Beach, now live in West Palm Beach, but I am a native of Palm Beach County and I am intertwined into the community. Glad to be here. Thank you so much, Kitty London.
Okay, Mr. Ferguson, please let us know who you are and what you do.
Good evening, everyone. This is Attorney Edwin Ferguson. My office is located here in Riviera Beach, similar to Attorney Gordon. We do a lot of personal injury work, but we also help persons in regard to buying and selling real estate. Prior to focusing my practice on personal injury, wrongful death, those type of things, police brutality, and real estate closings, we did a large amount of criminal defense work. So some of the topics that we're going to speak about tonight are pretty much, what I did in my wheelhouse for a large part of my 15-year career. So Kitty, thanks for inviting me, and I hope we have a great and impactful conversation tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Ferguson. Last but not least, Mr. Ridley, can you please let us know who you are and what you do?
My name is Chuck Ridley. I have the privilege of being a son of Delray Beach. I'm a community organizer. Those are the things that I'm extremely proud of, but I'm also a husband, a father of 5, a grandfather of 1. And I do this work because when you were raised in Delray, you were raised to fight for social justice issues. Oh, I also have the privilege of being the chair of Unify. Unify has a very simple mission. We build power for Black people and Black communities.
And once again, Kitty London, you are muted.
You ready to talk? I know, right? I got to get used to, listen, I'm just used to talking. This Zoom is like I'm running a whole show production by here, muting and making people talk. It's a lot for your girl. All right. Bishop Thomas Masters, let the world know who you are and what you do. Lord, is he frozen? Bishop Masters, can you unfreeze?
Thankful and to be here tonight, to be joined by such great leaders and community servants. I am Bishop Thomas Masters, Bishop of the New Macedonian Missionary Baptist Church here in Riviera Beach. I am presently serving as the International Ambassador for the World Conference of Mayors, and formerly a mayor myself, 12 years of the great city of Riviera, and here I am today.
All right, thank you. Now, I know people may wonder, because it is called a legal edition, and people may wonder, we're not just talking to lawyers tonight. I wanted this to be a very diverse group because the things that we're going through right now, every one of these people have the expertise to help us and give us more information. We know that Bishop Masters has been crucial in the community when it comes to injustice. He heads marches, meetings, prayers, and I know that we're seeing a lot of that right now in our streets. We had a big one just 2 days ago, unfortunately ended up with 9 arrests. So now they need people like Edwin and Celicia to help them with the protesting as far as being violent, and we don't want that. So I want each and every one of the panelists, and we have questions already coming in, to kind of talk about how we move forward, because I think that's a big thing on people's mind. They say we talk and that's all that we do, but we need to know how we move forward. So today we need to speak to Mr. Senator Bobby Powell, you were at a meeting with quite a few elected officials today. And can you tell us, one, about the group and what you all tried to accomplish, or if you accomplished anything today?
Let's have you on mute, Bobby.
Thank you, Kitty. And thank you, Chuck. And as the senator representing the northern parts of Palm Beach County, myself and other members of the Palm Beach County Black Elected Officials Organization, we have all received a lot of calls, text messages, emails from people within our community, and they're not necessarily all Black people within our community, wondering what could they do and what could we do together to mitigate or prevent another George Floyd from happening here in Palm Beach County, and to reassure them that something like that wouldn't happen. So today, under the leadership of Mr. Lawrence Gordon, who is the president of the Palm Beach County Black Elected Officials Organization, myself, Corey Nearing, Commissioner Corey Nearing from West Palm Beach, Commissioner Hardy from Lake Worth, State Representative Al Jaquette, Commissioner Kashamba Miller Anderson, and Commissioner Doug Lawson from Riviera Beach, Commissioner Katrina Long Robinson from the city of Westlake, Commissioner Christina Romulus, and I'm sorry, I'm mentioning everyone because I'm sure I've forgotten someone who will call me later and say, you didn't say my name. But the Black elected officials who represent areas throughout this county, and our Belgrade brothers and sisters were not able to be with us there today, but we came together. We've decided we will be pushing for municipalities as well as the county and the state to look at their policing procedures and figure out ways to prevent excessive use of force. As we've looked at some of the videos throughout the state or throughout the nation of the protests that are happening, we understand and we see that some of these protests have resulted in some rioting, and we believe that that's coming from people on the outside who come into these communities hopeful to get things started. But we've also seen where police officers have used excessive force in these instances. We saw the case in Atlanta where the police officers were now fired and being charged for pulling college students out of the car and pepper spraying them. This is what is happening. And it's not all police officers. We've got very good police officers, but it's those bad ones that exacerbate situations like this. And I think what got the gall of the nation is watching a man die for 9 minutes by the use of not a gunshot, but a knee on his neck, and to cry out for his mother who had already been dead, saying, please, mama, don't let this happen. I haven't seen the whole video. I can't watch it. I just can't. So the Palm Beach County Black elected officials are together. We're pushing for statewide legislation, countywide legislation, as well as municipal legislation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Kitty?
Okay, so Lisa, you had something to say?
Yeah, in addition to watching, I've seen the video too many times, but it's still raw. In addition to watching the act being committed, I think that what hits us to the core is the fact that this was done not in the night, it's done in broad daylight, not where no one was around, but done knowing that other people are watching and knowing you are being videoed and feeling so entitled that you are going to get off that you don't give a rat's. That hits to the core. And actually, but for the public outcry, he would have, because the chief of police had not arrested him. It was the public outcry, the outcry of even their mayor, but the chief, who is the overseer of sorts of the actions and conducts or misconduct of the police officer. It's kind of hard to police yourself, though. I mean, it really is, to do it fairly. But he did it looking at the camera. It is a sense of entitlement, of trust, of a system that is going to allow you to have no recourse, allow no accountability, and to basically say that the lives of those who you kill who happen to be Black are meaningless. There's something wrong. No, there's a lot wrong with that. It is wrong from a legislative standpoint. It was done long before Bobby got in office. It is wrong from a prosecutorial standpoint. And it's wrong from a judicial standpoint. Each one of those prongs has a place in this disaster. Each one of them. And each one of them we vote for. Each one. So what can we do? We can talk, but we do need action. And with that action, we need to learn. We need to be educated about those things that we feel impassioned about so that we know and understand how it's connected to politics. People may say, oh, I don't want to hear voting again. You don't have to, but listen to what you're saying your needs and your wants and your desires are for what justice looks like to you. Be specific as to what it looks like to you, and then we can get down to the bottom. I think that most people, we call it stipulations in court as we're preparing for a trial. A stipulation is an agreement by which everybody can agree to that and don't have to argue about it. In this case, I don't even know if we agree. I think most of the world does, and we stipulate to what we saw was an act of inhumanity. What we saw was indeed murder. What we saw was indeed wrong. And what we saw was indeed what the world would consider a crime. We are a long ways from conviction. We have an arrest of one officer. We are a whole long ways before there's a conviction. And most cases run by officers, when they're prosecuted, and that's few as well, 90% of the time, they're won by the officers. And we need to take a look at that and the history of that, because it's a history of that. And why, since I think I had to look it up, 1704. That's about how long these laws have been in existence. They have evolved over time. But the relationship between Blacks and police historically has never been a crystal stair. It was
That's a good segue. Look, that's a good segue to Chief Sims, because he's the only officer on the panel tonight. And I wanted to make sure that he was able to speak, because as I'm riding home, and I'm sure everyone who's seen the signs, I mean, you got graffiti on most of the buildings now with either Black Lives Matter, or I'm not going to say the word, but F the police, right? And for me, I had to look back at that and say, you know what? I can't say F the police, because I have friends that are policemen. I have people who I know that are good policemen. You hear the chants where they say, no justice, no peace, prosecute police. But I think it should be prosecute bad police, because every police officer is not bad. So Chief Sims, and I know that you can only answer for your district, and that's Delray. But I just want you to kind of think about every chief, every sheriff in America. What should they be telling their deputies right now as we speak?
Well, can you hear me? Well, first of all, if anybody's seen that video and don't feel that that Mr. Floyd was completely and blatant first-degree murder, they shouldn't even do this profession, number one. Law enforcement got to understand that if you look at the vast majority of riots that have taken place in this country, it was due to the actions of law enforcement not doing for the most part. And once you look at it, law enforcement, the culture is broken in law enforcement. It's perpetuated year after year, decade after decade, decade after decade. but it's up to each department's leaders in each department to put measures in place to hold their officers accountable. And it's also up to the community as well to ensure that these things are happening and that the chief is being held accountable for making sure that the officers are being held accountable. So I think it's going to take a complete community effort because we all need to hold each other accountable. With that being said, and we have to weed out the bad officers. There's no place in this business for bad policing, police officers. I honestly believe that the vast majority of police officers are good people. But it only takes a few to tarnish the entire industry. But it's no different from any other industry. You got bad doctors, you got bad lawyers, you have bad people in every industry. But when you're attached to a profession with so much authority and power, when you have the ability to deprive people of their freedom and life, you can't take those for granted. You have to make sure you have the proper mechanisms in place for accountability when you have that much power and authority. And if you're not willing to do that, we shouldn't be in the profession. We should retire and move forward and move on, because what's happening, we just been set back another 50 to 50 years. We've been set back another 50 years. If you look at that video, which I still see so vividly in my mind at this very moment, it takes me back to the 50s and 60s when being released African Americans. It's no different. This time it was a police officer as the K9 dog in this case. And for those guys to stand around and do absolutely nothing, they are just as guilty as the person that actually committed the crime. All of them should be charged with murder, an accessory to murder. Mm-hmm. Now, with that being said, I think law enforcement is a courageous, admirable, noble profession, but the bad apples have to be weeded out. And until that happens, we're going to continue to have the same problem. It's going to always exist if we turn a blind eye to the individuals that's out there doing things that they shouldn't be doing. If you don't address the small things, eventually it's going to explode. That's why we need, as agencies, we should have systems in place to keep our people accountable. For instance, early warning systems need to be, every agency needs an early warning system. Early warning systems would alert you when an officer have had several complaints. Therefore, you can address that officer before it get to the point to where we are currently. That's the early warning system. You have to have those accountabilities in place. And you have to, and I'm sure every department has a disciplinary process and system in place, but you have to utilize that. You have to discipline people to the level in which they need to be disciplined. Discipline is in place to punish someone for doing something they shouldn't be doing. But if you're not doing these things, and if an officer feels as though they can get away with what they're doing, guess what? They're going to continue to do the exact same thing. So it's incumbent upon us to put systems in place. Right now, there was a program out of New Orleans Police by Chief Ferguson called EPIC. Ethical policing isn't courageous. That program is a system whereas officers are taught to how and when to intervene when an officer is getting out of hand. You have to train them. You have to change the culture. Until you change the culture, nothing changes in law enforcement. Until you weed out the bad people, nothing changes in law enforcement. I don't care how many meetings you have, how many, it was stated earlier about voting. People always saying about voting. Guess what? We vote for the president, but we don't vote for Congress. We don't vote for the Senate. We don't vote for the mayor. We don't the commission. We don't vote in those arenas. And guess what? Those are the people.
Go to the judges and miss over the judges. Most people just.
Yeah, those are the people that are going to determine what type of services that you receive. Those are the people that's going to determine who who's going to be your chief or who's going to be your fire chief. They're going to determine all your department heads, but yet you're not taking interest enough to learn and understand your local government. That's vital, because most of the people that's making the decisions on what you're receiving are all voting in office. If you're not willing to step up and do your part, nothing changes. So it's going to take a paradigm shift for some, and it's easy for others. If it doesn't happen, don't you expect change? You can't continue to do the same thing the same way and think and expect a different result. It has to be changed.
I think that some of the watching the news and feeling the frustrations and everything Chief just said, I really do agree with. I just agree with an officer, but I do agree with. I think that some people, or many people, just don't know how to go about the change, because we try and go through life every day to do what you need to do as a law-abiding citizen every day. You work hard, you deal with your bag of stuff that you deal with every day. And then life seems to stop when this happens, because even though I didn't know Mr. Floyd, I could envision someone else that I know being Mr. Floyd. I didn't know Breonna Taylor, but that could have been me. And so it makes you stop and say, wait a minute, really, people want to do something, but what can be done, and so that there is an ownership to it. There's an understanding, but also an ownership to the change to make it personable, not passing by. Because this cannot be a one and done. This conversation can't be a one and done. And so it's identifying specifically what can be done with immediacy, or relative immediacy, and that I'm sure Senator Powell can talk about in terms of laws changing, elections coming up, and then those things that will take a bit of time. It's over time. Culture doesn't change overnight. Culture takes time to change. But that's the training and all. But the organizations can meet about. But we must understand who's making decisions for us, and how the court system, you can get through the whole process and then the judge dismisses this through a summary judgment, and it never gets to a jury.
And that's true. I know Mr. Ridley is looking like he has a lot to say. So unmute yourself, Mr. Ridley. Let us know what your thoughts on this are. And then we're going to get to Bishop Masters and Edward Ferguson.
No,
And then we have
absolutely. I'm
questions
really
as well.
enjoying listening to the dialogue that's going on. I could just listen to these experts. I guess if I am to add anything to what I've already heard, I think I want to first say that Chief Sims and I have the privilege of growing up together on the south end of the county, attending the best university in the country. I got friends who were taking bets of how long before I would bring FAMU into the equation. But so he was a good man long before he became a police officer. And so what you hear coming out of his mouth does not surprise me or anyone that knows him. And I do agree that there are many, many really good police officers. If I am to push back on a point, I think there are two pieces that we often leave out. Yes, there are bad apples, but I don't know that what we saw in Minnesota was a flaw in policing. I see it more as the way police function in Black neighborhoods. There are two ways you're going to see that in this country, there are two Americas, and they're both policed differently. One America is policed in a way that is about protect and serve. The other America is policed in a way that is controlled. And when we talk about excessive force, they start at excessive force. It if they don't come into my neighborhood, and I'm not talking about things that I guess about, because part of my history is that I'm a recovering crack addict. And so there were times when I was in the neighborhood when the good folk on here, or good folk like you, may have been asleep. Policing is different after 12 o'clock in neighborhoods like mine. It's aggressive. And I want them, and the working assumption is that you have to come in with force so that you can be safe. There's something fundamentally wrong with the way they police our neighborhoods. I want them to go home. I want them to go home safe, but if you start at excessive force, you have a much better chance to getting to deadly force because you have very few places to go. And so that's the second piece that we don't talk about. And more importantly, is nothing that I saw, and I did watch it, surprised me, other than no one came in and tried to intervene. And I understand that too. I don't know that I would have intervened, but I hope I would have intervened. Because please, you all, if there's a foot on my neck and you were there, if you didn't intervene then, I'm not trying to be cute and flip with this, but I needed you just to throw a rock or something at that time. So maybe he'll take his foot off my neck so I can catch my breath. That's why he was calling his mama. And what's going to happen here is that we're going to do the same things that we've always done. We're going to start holding meetings and telling our young men about how to interact. You're going to see the grants that are going to come into nonprofits, the same nonprofits, to talk about it. But you're not going to see anything happen because of police unions. The police unions are a very powerful organization. And none of the things that we're talking about are new. None of the things that we're talking about, we didn't talk about from, and I remember being in Payne Chapel. Several of you was there when it was Trayvon. And I remember the looks in the face of many of the participants then. And then when it came to Corey Jones at Payne Chapel again. And Mr. Ferguson, I remember the first time I met you, it was in the governmental chambers of the county. And you was facilitating a meeting. And who was supposed to be there was the sheriff at that time, who snubbed the meeting at the request of the city council, the county commission. And they're able to do that because of the power of the police union, because of the power of Chamber of Commerce, the power of economic councils, who have a zero tolerance approach. And they believe in an ideology that places profit, places money over people. And until we begin to understand how to give this fine police chief the cover he needs, because what he needs is more than just cover and good ideas. He needs someone who can look that union in the face and say, you're not going to use those powers you have because those unions get people elected. If you go to the financial report of the sheriff, you will see that that sheriff has almost $700,000. And the closest person to him will have about 35, and then the next is 23. Thank you, Brother Friedman, for always running, but you ain't gonna win against a power like that unless we learn to do something different. And so when they start talking about voting, that is the only remedy we have against a system that has come together to use their collective power to make sure that the wealthy are protected and served.
Okay. Hold on. He segued to you, Mr. Ferguson, in the meeting. So I'm going to give you that time, and then we're going to go to Bishop Masters, and then we have questions from the audience.
So a couple of things, just in case the mic doesn't make it back to me, because I see we're getting a little late here in the evening. Wanted to comment on a few things that the prior speakers have spoken about. So I said, these type of issues I've been dealing with since I came back in town from law school. So first of all, as far as police culture, let's be honest with it. It's not that it's broken, it's ingrained. So I'm not anyone's history teacher, but if you open the book, you can see where since we were emancipated, police, particularly in the South and to be honest, across the country, they've had a certain MO. So what you're seeing, whether it be with Trayvon, even though that hack wasn't a cop, Zimmerman, but whether you're talking about Mr. Floyd or Mr. Garner, Mr. Jones, Ariel Roman, who's not African American, but the situation that happened to him in Chicago less than a year ago was the same as just Black cops did it to a non-Black man, but it's still just as egregious. That goes to the mindset that most police forces have. So I think that we need to change the game altogether as far as that goes. One thing I also want to say, as a follow-up to Chief Sims' comment, I don't believe policemen are fungible. So I don't believe they can just be interchanged. I've been dealing with wrongful death cases for well over the past 10 years involving persons that have been shot and killed by police officers. And I won't get into the specific municipalities, although fortunately it was not Boynton Beach, I'll say that. But one thing that I do know is that policing is hard work. It's very stressful. And we talk about PTSD and we talk about this and we talk about that. We talk about how it's important when the police are going through the police academy for them to do some arbitrary amount of physical fitness. But the one thing that we don't do, and we should actually do, is check to see how they're feeling between those two ears. Because a lot of them are overstressed. A lot of them are simply mentally incompetent or unfit to serve as police from day one. So they're just ticking time bombs, waiting to explode. We see a large or an inordinate amount of the persons who are involved in these excessive force cases that are the genesis of these rallies are fairly inexperienced officers. By inexperienced, I mean persons that are under 7 years. Now, this clown who killed George Floyd, I did some research on him a few days ago. He has a rap sheet as long as any common criminal in the prisons here in Florida. I believe I saw at least 20 incidents of excessive force, more than one shooting incident. He was a bad apple. So again, that goes to my point about the fact that it's not the system is broken, it's simply ingrained that way. You kind of look the other way when your fellow brother is in the wrong. So what Chief Sims is saying to do is definitely an outlier in regard to law enforcement. And to that point, I think I would encourage him to do what he can, while he can, to implement that early warning system in Boynton so that it's not just talk. Because he is correct that if we did kind of pull the coattails to those officers who have shown themselves to be unfit, whether in the evaluation process or once they're out on the street, we can save some unnecessary conflicts. And I want to say this, persons oftentimes will try to conflate Black on Black crime amongst private citizens with what happens between private citizens and law enforcement. You shouldn't. Those two things are mutually exclusive. Nobody in their right mind thinks that it's good for Black man 1 to shoot Black man 2 over a crack rock or for an iPhone or anything like that. That's wrong, that's criminal. But it's even more egregious where the person who's supposed to be your protector, if you will, your lawman or lawwoman, as the case may be, is coming in and acting just as criminal as the fool who just shot you or tried to steal something from you. So I think we need to kind of take a real look at that. And again, that's why I say that system is just inherently flawed, and we need to change the game by having people that are more mentally equipped to serve as policemen, because everybody's not meant to do it. I want to say a few other things too. I think it's important that we finally take time. And I'm not saying that it's easy, but we have to really take time to educate ourselves as a group of people. I've heard it said, I tell my kids, and they're only 4 and 2 years old respectively, reading is leading. What we're good for doing, we being the aggrieved parties, is rallying, rioting, tearing up stuff. But we don't do the long work. We don't do the real work that's required to affect change. We don't educate ourselves on what's really happening, see the commonality of certain points between, say, the Rodney King incident to the Corey Jones incident, and insist on our government implementing change for us. Because make no mistake, government doesn't run us, we run government. Anything the government does, they do at our permission. And so we need to be more empowered and more committed to exerting that power to create a new system. I mean, I've seen many of these calls, maybe not by way of Zoom, where people are saying these nice words, just like we're saying, year after year after year, but nothing really changes. And I think that I would implore and encourage everybody who's listening to this to read more, to educate yourself more, and to be committed to a thing. Don't just talk about it. Don't just like this page. Don't just share this page. Don't just say, yeah, that was a great point, Attorney Gordon, or a great point, Mayor Masters, or Chief Sims, or Mr. Ridley, or Mr. Powell, or Ms. London. Get out here and do something. Create that world that you really want. Because if you look at pretty much every other group here in the United States, to a larger degree than us, and I'm referring to us as Black Americans, I think they've done it. And I don't want to hear about the fact that, we came here, so many hundred years ago and slavery and all these type of things. Everybody has trouble. And I'm not minimizing that because I'm, as far as I can tell, I'm as black as anybody is on this group right now. But I'm saying, in spite of all those things, I choose to push to a higher mark, and I would encourage everybody to do the same thing. Lastly, as far as these marches goes and these rioting goes, I see a lot of sympathy, I see a lot of empathy, but I don't really see these young men, these young women truly rising to the status of martyr, being so embedded in your mind that you can't go back to what happened before, that you can't go back to just simply looking in your phone, looking at YouTube, wasting your life away on TV. Become more active, be more serious about it then. If you're not willing to do that in the forms of voting, in forms of just truly educating yourself, being more financially literate, financially solvent, you're losing the game, and you're doing your small part to ensure that something like this happens in the future. And I hate to be so dark in that regard, but it's just the truth. And I'm tired of seeing this. There's nothing to cry about from that standpoint. It's just time to get done. It's time to get busy. So if you want to get busy, let's figure out some real solutions to make this thing happen. Thank you.
Can we jump back, Kitty, on 2 points? And I just want to get Attorney Ferguson's perspective as well as Chief Sims' perspective. As an elected official who we're drafting legislation for the Black Caucus and the Democratic Caucus in terms of looking at procedures and creating a database for excessive force here in the state of Florida. Hopefully we can get that done. But I also noticed that when someone is killed in the streets, and I think for Black folk, and it's become that, let me spit this out. Black folk have felt like when they see the police, our skin has been weaponized, and we feel like if we get stopped, we may not make it home, or we may go to, when I see the police behind me, I don't think I'm getting a ticket. I think, oh my God, I'm going to jail. They're gonna do something, right? My counterpart, some of them feel like, yes, you're here to help me. And I think that was the case with Ahmaud Arbery, where they felt that they could kill this man on the street, go home, and not even face arrest. The thing with George Zimmerman, killed him on the street, went home, not even face arrest. And then instead of looking at the victim and seeing that this was a victim, the persons who did it, the perpetrators, we don't look back at their history. We didn't look back at to even the cases that we talk about with Derek Chauvin, the now prisoner, but the police officer who killed George Floyd. All these cases, if one person reports on a police officer, you know there's 10 that didn't. My nephews, one of them who's no longer with us, but I've had situations where they've been harassed and I've said, let's go to the police station and file a report. And they wouldn't do it. So think about all these people who won't do it. If one person does it, I don't know how many people, if this guy's had 14 cases, then how many people did not go back and report on them? Is there a discrepancy in terms of why this is not always reported? The news will dig up my background and tell you that I got a ticket in 2001 and that's why I was whatever, but that's my question, and that's why is there a discrepancy there?
I mean, it takes time for somebody to go out and file a complaint. I mean, sometimes people say, well, that's just the way it is. People have an expectation that this is how it is, so they don't think it's really going to change anything.
I think
to that point, I think it's important for people to educate themselves and understand the impact that just making that small little complaint can have in the long run. And also your engagement and how your local government is run. You are important, you do count. And so, Senator Powell, unless people see themselves as being worthy of being worth making a fuss about, then yeah, you have these bad actors that are going to inherently, or they're going to continue to do what they do because this current system is inherently flawed. It's meant for them to do, them being the bad actors that we're talking about, is meant for them to run roughshod.
So meant for
I
fear.
think that
Of fear.
it was my time now. I think. Is it my time? Everyone's. I'm humbly waiting.
Go ahead. Yes, please. I know you've been holding it for a while, so please go ahead.
Yes. I love Sister Salisa, but I got to talk right now. She come on after me.
You got
a lot of. All right. Listen. I want to say a few things. First of all, we can talk about all night about what happened, how it happened, why it happened, the problems, systematic racism. But what can be done? Solutions. Because if you're not a part, the problem, you're the solution. The first thing, as the international ambassador for the World Conference of Mayors, we are calling number one for every officer to be arrested and charged with serious charges. Number two, there has to be a federal law outlawing chokeholds, period. Period. Has to be a federal law. During the civil rights era, most of everything that we got, it had to come from Congress federally. Federal housing, civil, public accommodations, voting rights, and the list can go on and on and on. Number three, the body cam issue. I'm not for sure, last time I checked, I'm not for sure if the Palm Beach County Sheriff Department had body cams. Does anyone know that? I know they didn't a few years ago. And I don't think they do now. But having said that, there has to be some kind of law that every police department has to have body cams. Not just the body cam, but the protocol of how they operate. If they operate where the policeman has an option to turn it on or turn it off, but not turn it on and off, that's a problem. Does it come on when he gets out the car? Does it come on with taser? When does it come on? That has to be addressed. Also, with that, I thought, I could be in error, that it was a federal law to beat someone when someone is handcuffed. If not, then we need to look at that as well. I'm a firm believer in neighborhood policing. The police has got to know the community, and the community has to know the police officer. That happened when police officers could walk the beat, and they do, and they did. And I think we need to go back to some of the basics. Also, the Montgomery boycott was one of the most effective boycotts that Black people ever did. I think the time has come that we have to support and call for this blackout day. We've got to organize and make sure that on that day, that we send a very strong message to corporate America. We've got to hit them in the pockets. And I know people are saying, where are the Black clergy now? Let me just say, the Black clergy is involved all over this country. In what happened, I just looked at something where the Black clergy came together in Los Angeles and all over. Many Black pastors are addressing it in their congregations, and they're doing some things that you may or may not be aware of. But I can say that within the next 3 days, you are going to see and hear from the Black pastors collectively here in Palm Beach County, and they're coming together, but I'm not at liberty to say what that is, but they will, and you will hear from them. But what I'm concerned about is not as much about the Black pastors as I am the white pastors. We have a lot of Black parishioners that are going to be white churches or white pastors. Did not call any names, there's several of them. Dr. King wrote a letter from the Birmingham jail, and he challenged the white ministers, the white pastors. Where are you? Why are you quiet? Why are you silent? Segregation, racism. Black people are getting beat up. What are you doing? Locked up. So my question is, my fellow clergymen, the priests, the rabbis, the Pentecostalists, the conservatives, whatever you are, every preacher should know and see that this is just morally wrong. Let's just deal with that, since you want to deal with moral and ethics. But it's interesting that I have not heard any voices from white clergy at all. And we should be hearing not just from Black clergy, but where are our white brothers and sisters? Why are they not standing up and speaking out? The other thing I want to say, that during the civil rights era, many people refer to Dr. King and others as outside agitators. But however, Dr. King and others that came into the community, they called them outside agitators, but they were there for peace and nonviolence. Now you have people that are coming into the community, we call them outside agitators again, but they're coming in for violence. However, let's not get it twisted. Everybody that's involved or was involved in the violent protests are not outside agitators. There are children from West Palm Beach. And I say children, young people from Riviera Beach, young people from Delray, young people from Boynton. So it's not all outside agitators. And the other thing is, I was at the protest, a couple of days ago when it was peaceful and nonviolent, of course. And what I observed that I would say almost 45% of the protesters were people that did not look like me. 45% or maybe even more of the people that are involved in violence, the violence, also are people that do not look like me. So what am I saying? This is the first time that I can remember where whites have really got involved to this level. And so there you are. So we've got to find a way. And I know people are saying that marching is over. It's not going to accomplish anything because they forget what marches have accomplished in the past. You know, when we marched, civil rights became alive. We got federal, we got housing, we got public accommodations, we got voting rights. When women marched, they got the right to vote. When young people marched, they stopped the war in Vietnam. When Joshua marched, walls came tumbling down. We can go on and on. And whether it's outdated or not, we have to find a way to channel the energies of our young people in a peaceful way rather than in a violent way, and give them some options and alternatives how they can be a part of change. And we've been saying, this is nothing new. No justice, no peace. But we've got to bring them into the movement in a way as we brought them in with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. So we've got to bring our young people in a way that's not violent, but yet can accomplish what they want to happen. That's where I am. And within 72 hours, you hear from the Black pastors of Palm Beach County.
Chief?
Yes, a couple of things. One is Attorney Ferguson said something about the psych test. I think every police department in the country probably performs a psychological examination, and those undesirables can get past the psychological examination. Apparently, they are doing so. But what you can't change is the heart. If you're coming in with a bad heart prior to becoming a law enforcement officer, guess what? That's going to carry over as a police officer. The second point, reporting, calling the police, or you want to file a report on a law enforcement officer. That varies from agency to agency. I can tell you what we do. We go out to the community, make ourselves available to the community by every means necessary. We go into every neighborhood in our city. We operate from every neighborhood in our city. We educate from every neighborhood in our city. And we encourage those that want to file a complaint to file a complaint. We don't have no limitations on filing complaints. You can file through phone, email, social media. We accept all complaints from any citizen in the city of Delray Beach. So that varies from city to city. But one thing we find as a people, as African Americans, we tend to blow in, blow up, and blow away. There's no stick to it. We don't stick to anything because marching is fine, but there's no plan after the march. And that's a problem. We still haven't grasped or refused to accept the fact that change happens with policy change. You have to change policy to change culture. You have to change policy to change anything that you really want to impact, especially when it comes to law enforcement. So if you're not putting people in a position with like interest, nothing changes. That's the reality of it. I want you to look at the case of Graham versus Connor.
Yeah, I was going to say the Supreme Court case.
1989. If you read that
Yeah.
case pretty much officers, when it talks about the reasonableness of a police action when it comes to actually taking a life, traffic stops, the gamut. And I'm not an attorney, so I'm not going to try to interpret.
Let me just chime in for a second. Basically, what that case, that U.S. Supreme Court case, and it goes to actually Bishop Masters and his question about the federal law. It says that reasonableness of the use of excessive force has to be viewed from the eyes of the police officer on the scene, and not from hindsight 2020 vision, quote unquote.
Right.
That is what it says. So it means, so it's the reasonableness of the officer who is committing the act of harm is what the law says. That is what it says. To change that, that's policy. To change that, that's case law. To change that means we have to vote.
Absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
right, policy.
And one other thing, Mr. Masters, Bishop Masters spoke about, and my experience with pastors, you can get 5 black pastors to come together on one accord. I haven't seen it. We are divided, not only as a people, but we're divided in the churches. If you can get 3 to 4 to 5 churches to come together on one accord, I would applaud that effort and be more than willing to participate. Now,
Pastors came together for Corey Jones. Black pastors came together for Trayvon Martin. And we're coming together on this. Just wait. You'll see. 3 days. Within 3 days.
We can come together with something.
What I want to know from Chief is that what you mentioned about the early warning system, Chief,
Yes.
what do you need from us in the community to do to assist you in implementing that?
Well, I have it already.
Okay, so what's the challenge?
I already have it. My statement is that I think all agencies should have it. Now, granted, everything that we put in place, there's a cost associated with it. Mm-hmm. So sometimes you have to go to commission. The commission has to step up and provide the funding for body-worn cameras, early warning systems, because all those are electronic digital systems that we have in place. Fortunately, we've had the ability to purchase those things in my agency, but all agencies don't have the funding for those things. That's why you have to, in those cases, you have to go to the next level, the commission, to get the necessary tools to help officers, law enforcement, help them hold themselves accountable, as well as the community hold them accountable. Because what happens is this: we track traffic stops in my agency based on race, the reason we stop them, whether we receive a citation, the area we stop them. Because when we pull reports, when we say something, we're going to pull the documents to prove what we're saying. Because those questions are being asked of me in my community. We have to adapt to the community in which we serve. My policing method and strategies and methodologies is based on the city of Delray Beach. And believe me, the residents in the city of Delray Beach, they speak their mind. Mm-hmm. It's no shortcuts. Mr. Ridley, him and I go back for my entire career, even prior to. But guess what? If he sees something he thinks not right, guess what he's gonna do? He's gonna let me know that. And I truly appreciate that, because we need to hear the different perspectives. They need to hear my perspective, and I need to hear their perspective. And sometimes we're gonna agree to disagree, and sometimes it promotes change. But you have to be willing to open the door and entertain.
To do that, to open the door to other and have such conversations with other law enforcement agencies, because you just said that it changes based upon the particular agency. We're in a state of immediacy and urgency. What is the fastest route?
You can't really hear it in and out.
Unfortunately, there's no speedy way to accomplish that. Sometimes it has to come from someone from the outside asking the right questions. By asking the right questions, sometimes you can find out the information that you need, and sometimes it allows you to assist that agency in getting the tools that they need that would be beneficial not only for them, but also for the city. Because I can tell you, law enforcement costs the cities probably more, I'm sure it costs the cities more money and taxpayers more money than any other department in a municipality because of lawsuits. So it's cost effective to put mechanisms like that in place for the benefit of the residents that's paying taxes at the very least.
Mhm. Mhm. I also want to let the audience know, not only do we have, the officers have a wide breadth of authority. I mean, they have the legal ability to maim and kill. They have the badge. But they also, once you get beyond that, they also have the challenges of the victim has to overcome. And that is what's called qualified immunity, because they have that to protect them as well. And qualified immunity gives them, it's two-pronged. It gives an objective standard. And that standard for the court is to know whether or not the officer knew that what he or she was doing at the time was a civil rights violation. Okay, the world can see that it is, but when it comes to that particular claim, it is what the officer knew. And the second prong of that is more of a subjective standard. And that used to be is whether or not the officer feared for his life. But that is subjective. That is whether or not the officer believed that what he was doing was right at the time. If he is convincing that what he believed he was doing was right at the time, correct at the time, humane at the time, not illegal at the time, then he's not liable. Those are two hurdles that are huge to get over. To change those hurdles require changes in Congress. And there's a bill that's been sitting in the US Congress, a House bill that hasn't even hit the floor, that would have helped and will help if it gets off the floor and then to the Senate. But you know the Senate isn't going to vote for this right now. But at least the effort is made. The start, just like you have, Chief has the start of the product ready to implement. And it would make it so much easier to make the programmatic policy changes that we are looking for in terms of police accountability.
That's true.
Attorney
Now, I know I'm going to, Senator has some policies he's going to talk about. I just wanted to, Edwin, you had something to say real quick?
Yeah,
And we're going to get to the policies and then.
I'm looking at some of the comments from the viewers, and a large number of them are in line with my mindset. Nobody really cares about what pastors are stepping to the forefront. They're people. So they're going to do what they want to do when they want to do it. Nobody really cares in that regard about what policemen's policies are in this city or that city or whatever the case may be. They really want to know what we're going to do as a society to prevent something like this from happening. So I want to go back to something I said early on is we got to make a new game. Stop trying to play this old, tired, rigged game. Before this whole concept, I heard the counselor say that police are licensed to maim and kill. I'm not necessarily going to go there, but I will say that we are licensed to educate ourselves, and we don't have to continue being the whipping boy. So when you're out on the road, there are three things you should always do. If you stop by law enforcement, be respectful. It doesn't matter if they're dead wrong, he, she, they, it doesn't matter. Stay calm as you can. When you see those blue lights, your heart's going to probably start racing. You might get a little sweaty, might even stutter a little bit, but still stay calm. And then thirdly, say nothing. A lot of these incidents get exacerbated because you have a foolish cop, an ill-trained cop, a broken cop. Hearing you say certain things that triggers in their mind something that happened whenever. I'm cutting to the chase. We don't have time to kind of debate this point by point. And it's been my experience, whether it be in criminal law or on the civil side, that when we're stopped with just simply say nothing, it's hard for them to argue against themselves as far as that goes. Now, of course, this does not apply to every single situation. See Corey Jones, see Trayvon, see anybody you want to see. But if you do those three things, that'll be helpful. Last, I want to emphasize that it's imperative for us to educate ourselves on everything that we're involved in. So when we're talking about municipal law and codes and ordinances and policy and procedure of the police, we need to take time to know those things. Don't just focus on how many people like our page or how many shares are given video. God, we got to educate ourselves. treated just like the importance of eating well each day and exercising. If you don't do those things, we're setting ourselves up to be the target again. That's the reason why we seem to get one of the reasons, a large reason why we disproportionately are targeted by these ill-advised, these ill-equipped, these bad actor cops, because they know that we're doing it on our own. We're ignorant of certain things. The sooner we educate ourselves, that actually is something that we can do today. We don't need to worry about whether Tallahassee is going to go blue. It's not anytime soon. We don't need to worry about whether Palm Beach County is going to be able to implement something that's going to be required to be followed by our municipalities. They can't. We don't need to worry about whether we're going to get a majority of votes in our municipal government to implement body cameras and things of that nature, because as Chief said, there might be an economic issue as far as we supposedly don't have the budget for it or whatever the case may be. But we can monitor ourselves. We can insist on being counted. And it starts with us educating ourselves every single day. Don't care about any other group, what they want to do, for whatever reason they want to do it. We got to make sure that we do what's most important for ourselves, and that's to live and that's to improve our lives for ourselves and our families each day.
Well said. Okay, so Senator, we're going to talk about policies real quick.
Absolutely.
And I need you to answer this one question because Jerisa Berry, Dr. Berry had a question. She said, I have a newborn, COVID still exists. So for people who want to help with this movement, they can't go out and protest. She's asking, what can you do in the meantime before elections? And what I'm going to do so everybody can think about this, because this is the legal edition, I want to allow everyone to have closing arguments. I would say 2 minutes, please, because I know how that can go, especially when you have lawyers, but any final things that we need to say to the public and for the people that are viewing. But Senator Powell, it is on you about the policies now.
Dr. Berry, there are over 56,000 cases, 56,000 cases of coronavirus here in the state of Florida. So yes, it's still a thing. And what you can do, I agree with Attorney Ferguson and also Chief Sims when it comes to change. Change not only happens at the ballot box, but change happens in terms of policy. And what Attorney Ferguson said, I agree and I disagree to a point, right? We say Tallahassee's not going to go blue anytime soon, but there's a reason for that. There are those who are in power who are doing everything in their power to make sure certain people don't vote. And those of us who can vote, continuing to make sure that we're apathetic in terms of utilizing that power to vote. Remember the last gubernatorial election, people can tell you what they want, but this was the closest governor's election in the last 20 years at least. I looked that up. So when it comes to policy, the Florida Legislative Black Caucus, and that's not to be confused with the Senate, not the Senate, the Black elected officials of Palm Beach County, the House and the Senate, we are proposing legislation this upcoming year that would do several things. Right now, preliminarily, define and establish punitive measures and punishment for Florida law enforcement officers who have been found guilty of unlawful and excessive use of force that results in serious bodily injury or death. This also goes for Florida district attorneys who are found to be guilty in an involvement or an attempt of covering up a crime, murder, or serious wrongdoing. Codify in law the requirement for the Florida Department of Law Enforcement to create, implement, maintain a statewide database that captures data on the excessive use of force that causes serious bodily injury, incidents involving state, county, city, school districts, state, college, university, law enforcement agencies, and require, and this is just some of them, I can go into the whole list, but I just want to give you a few bullet points, require the above mentioned FDLE statewide database to be updated quarterly and in alignment with the FBI's use of data collection initiative launched January 1st of 2019. So by creating this database, we know who the bad actors are. It allows for someone, let's say Chief Sims gets rid of somebody in Delray because they're a bad officer. It doesn't allow them to go over to Okaloosa County or Okeechobee and become an officer. I had an incident in Tallahassee where a young lady, I'm in my late 30s now, and she's in her early 20s, young white police officer. And I look at her as I look at anybody else. I went to give her my ID to go into the parking garage in Tallahassee. It says state senator. It expired December 2018. It's January 2019. I just was reelected. She looked at my badge and said, you need to go park your car in visitors parking, which in Tallahassee is, you'll never find it. and you need to enter through the front entrance and go and get a new ID before I let you in. Other senators' cars were already there. She expected me to leave. I told her, you know, you need to let me in. We had a back and forth. She eventually called me an a-hole. And this is the type of thing that we have to deal with. She wasn't prepared to be an officer. I tried to persuade uh, her bosses that I don't want to see her, but they moved her to another location. Why? Because it's so hard to get someone to go through that training. Once they've gone through the training, no matter whether they don't know how to deal with people of different races, genders, or ethnicities, they don't want to get rid of them because, oh, we spent money on this person's training. Well, families have to deal with that when these people behave in a poor manner. So that's the policy we're preparing, and then that will be followed with our municipalities. It has to be municipal, it has to be countywide, it has to be statewide, and then national.
Is there a ban that can is there a policy that can be implemented fairly immediately? This is to Chief or to you, Bobby, to ban chokeholds or to ban strangulation holds. I mean, I know that I don't know where you learn how to apply a knee to the carotid. I mean, any kind of hold like that. Can there be a policy that all police agencies
Exactly.
have to deal with and ban it? Is that feasible?
That can be done only through municipal governments right now, because in Tallahassee, we don't go back until after November.
So in
So-
November, then can it be a bill that goes to the House floor, then the Senate floor? I don't know if the governor would sign it, but that's what I'm looking, because that would be an immediate change.
Well, it would have to go through the process. It would go through the committee process first in the House and in the Senate
Mhm.
before it made it to the floor in the House and in the Senate, and then it would have to make it to the governor. And this is where the people who run the committees in Tallahassee are not people who look like me.
I know. Chief, is it possible for FDLE to implement such rules, procedural rules? I can't. Chief, can't hear you. Okay.
That would have to be done through the legislation. Each municipality, believe it or not, each municipality probably have their own individual policies. And I can tell you my policy don't have chokeholds in the policy. We don't choke. I can't tell you what another city has. So that would be very difficult and time consuming to get a statewide, nationwide policy of that magnitude in place immediatally. It just wouldn't happen. It
Because
just wouldn't
they
happen.
wouldn't want to give up the power for doing it, or?
Well, it would be up to the individual agency right now. It would be up to the individual agency to do it. And I can't tell you what's in another agency's policy. But I'm sure most agency that has a website, you could probably pull their policies up on the website and look at their use of force policy. That will sometimes determine what they have in place when it comes to apprehension of a individual. So you can look at that. But another thing I want to mention, what Senator Powell mentioned about keeping track of those, making sure bad apples are not moving abroad. On my first 2 weeks on the force, I had to recommend termination for a 17-year officer, and the city manager upheld my recommendation. And under those circumstances, when an officer separates from an agency, there's a document that has to be filled out and turned in to FDLE with the reason for the separation, either moral turpitude, on the investigation. All those boxes have to be checked off. And what that does, that person will actually have to go through a FDLA hearing to determine whether their ticket get pulled or their certificate get snatched away. And I have a case coming up in 2 months with that same individual to see whether his ticket is going to be taken away. But one thing I felt obligated to do, I didn't think he would be he wasn't a fit for Delray Beach Police Department. That I can't affect. And most chiefs and sheriffs have that authority to make those decisions. Me personally, every person that's hired be it sworn or civilian, we do an extensive background investigation on them. And if they fired from another police department or they job hopping, guess what? They don't get hired in Delray Beach. And I assume the vast majority of most agencies are like that. But sometimes they find that one agency that provides them a safe route. And they go and do the same exact thing they did in the agency prior to that. That's one of those bad apples we have to weed out of the system. Until we're willing to aggressively weed out the bad apples, we're going to continue to have some of the issues that we're experiencing currently. I just the bottom line.
We're going to prepare. Hold on. All right, I'm here. Okay. So this is why People of Power has legal additions, part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, because these conversations can go on all night, but I wanted to make sure that everyone was able to give their information, give their take on how we can go forward, because that's what we need to do. We actually need to go forward. So Mr. Ridley, I want to make sure, because I know we haven't heard a lot from you this evening, but I want to make sure that you get what you have to say out. And I call, like I said, the closing arguments. And what the closing arguments will basically be, you wrap up really what you have to say if you left anything out, but a call to action to go forward, what we need to do as a community, in your opinion.
Thank you. So, what a great conversation. And I agree with much of what I heard. I think the thing that I want to highlight is, as a community, the one piece that we miss is not policy. It is how policy moves and get approved. The second thing I think we miss is that we squander the power that we have. I hear us often talk about Black people don't vote. That's not true. We're one of the largest voting blocs in this country. In November, doing even years, right? We're going to vote during the governor's race, and we're going to vote during the presidential race. But people who make decisions about elections aren't the politicians and the officials. They're the consultants who run these races and know how to crunch and count numbers. And they look at precincts that turn out. In District 7, we have seen tremendous growth in the number of people in District 7, the Black precincts, that vote in the March election. In fact, we're one of the fastest growing number of super voters in this county. You have to learn how to leverage that. And the reason that's important is that the municipal elections are won on the smallest of margins in many races. Now, we might not be able to win a race just on our constituency and our base, but we daggone can swing. And if you know that you can swing races, and that is what we do in Delray, we know we can swing race, then you then are able to have a kind of power that unions have. Unions don't, and I'm talking about the police union and the fire unions, they can't win a race, they can impact the race, and they've learned how to use that leverage to get the policies that they want to have move forward. We have to learn that trick. We got the power, we squander it. We have to learn how to, we're not lacking policy. We have to learn how to move it. Unify will help those neighbors in those districts in our area. Commissioner Powell, I challenge you and the Black elected officials to now sit down with Unify and use the in Delray, what we have is we call them hollers and huggers. Here in Delray, you will know Reggie Cox is a holler. All right?
Good time.
I used to be a hollerer, but Reggie hollered so loud I had to become a hugger. We have to have the inside-outside game. Elected officials, you work the inside game, turn it over to the community organizers, allow us to work the outside game, and watch what begins to happen when we begin to make our power move the same way as the police and fire union, the same way as the Chamber of Commerce, the same way as economic council. We can make our power and voice count. But we gotta start playing a different kind of game. On that, I agree with Mr. Ferguson. Thank you.
Bishop Thomas Masters, your final arguments.
Well, I just want to go back to say that if it has to be by city, as it relates to the chokehold, then so be it. But it still needs to be a federal law, outlawing it on a federal basis, number one. Number two, I think we need to rethink and reactivate Police Citizen Review Board. I think Attorney Salisa Gordon said that it's hard for police to police. But at one time in 10 or 15 years ago, we had Police Citizens Review Board where the community would help police. And we need to go back and look at how we can form Police Citizens Review. And I know a lot of time law enforcement don't like that because it kind of takes away some of their, maybe power, but it would be a good thing to do. And other than that, I'm still going to push for body cams for every police department. It ought to be mandated on a federal level. And then I would love for the community to come together and support the blackout days, because we've got to hit this economically in the pocket to bring about any kind of change. And I'll rest at this point. That's it.
Bishop Masters. Mr. Edwin Ferguson, closing arguments.
Edwin, you're on mute, man.
I was laughing at the people who were talking without muting themselves before. I'm breaking curfew right now. My wife just told me Riviera Beach is on curfew. If I get arrested and I promise y'all I will be respectful. I will stay calm and I will say nothing. And Bob, if you can make a call for me to get me out on OR by 8 in the morning, I'd appreciate it. I have a couple of things I need to take care of here at the office. But in all seriousness though, I took this invitation mainly to kind of speak and encourage those who are watching this. The panelists all have their views and I respect all their views. But in my experience, the thing that's missing amongst our community is a commitment to educate ourselves, and not just educate ourselves, to activate ourselves. We so frequently move ourselves like 5 fingers instead of being a fist. And until we do that, the power that Mr. Ridley was referring to is going to continue to be misguided and unfocused. We have to do that. And it starts with our education of ourselves. Yes, voting is important. Although, as Senator Powell said before, there's only so much done that likely will get done in a timely fashion, say in the next year to 2, because of the constitution of the current state Congress. We've already heard from Chief Sims about some of the hurdles that we would face in order to get body cameras. And body cameras are a deterrent, but they're not a panacea. Nothing that's been said tonight is a magical elixir. Even what I said about knowing your rights. See Corey Jones. There are people that are dead who did everything right. So I'm not representing to you that this is some insurance against bad things happening. We all see bad things happen every day. What we don't see is our society as a whole commit to educating ourselves individually and from a societal standpoint. When we do that, you will see that there is less space for these bad actors to exist, because they only exist in the space that our ignorance allows them. So I want to encourage you all to educate yourselves on what you can and can't do when you come into contact with a law enforcement officer, the importance of voting and who you're voting and researching who you're voting for. And then once they get in, keeping a fire under their butt to make sure that they do what they promised you when they got in the first place. Don't let these persons that Mr. Ridley referred to you continue to affect our political life, our day-to-day life, by who they deem fit to rule us. As I said, we run the government doesn't run us. It's time for us to pull our heads out of the sand, put our feet back on the ground and get to working. That's my last word for the night. Thanks, you all be blessed. Thank you. Thanks, Kitty.
Alicia.
Oh, Hi.
hey, yeah, I said you're close. So we still got two more closing arguments. I know we got to keep it under 2 minutes. I know it's hard, but
All right.
keep
All
it
right.
under
We are seeking justice for everyone. That, and when I say we're seeking, meaning this is what I think we're groveling about, just as globally, worldwide, whether it's here in the United States, is it in London, you look, you see all of the people, all different walks of life protesting about inhumane treatment that we watched. We do count. Ed Ferguson says that we should count, and we should count, but we need to make sure that while we're home, if we're gonna count, to make some changes, let's do actions. Let's complete the census so that we make sure that we do really count and that we are seen. Complete the doggone census. It takes no time to do it. By doing so, the importance of that is, so you want to know who represents you. You want to know the census this year will help make that determination of where those lines are drawn, of who is going to be your representatives in Tallahassee and in the nation, how many people we get, who we get, what they look like, what their concerns are, and how they relate to us, if at all. That census helps draw those maps. It's important. It's important to complete. It is important to make sure that you are registered to vote. You may think you're registered. Make sure that you're registered. It's pbcelections.org. It's really, I just went on it myself real quick, just to double check. People have gotten purged off the rolls. Make sure, if you're going to, the deadline for that is August 18th to make sure that you get a vote by mail. If you're going to register, if you need to register to vote, not if you're going to, but if you need to, please do so by July the 20th. It doesn't take long. If you've moved, if you changed your handwriting, if you've broken your hand, your signature may change. Take care of that. It doesn't take long. You need to identify those pertinent and those important issues that we want to see justice reflect for us. If it's banning chokeholds, figure out whether or not the agencies where you live use that. If it's strangleholds, if it's being transparent, the police being transparent. If you feel like the prosecutor's office is not handing down prosecutions or charges fairly, we vote for the prosecutor as well. Dave Ehrenberg has been a good prosecutor. He has gone unopposed, so he's going to be in office for a bit. But that's where that gripe goes. For the sheriff, you think it's unfair arrest? We vote for the sheriff. Marching is great, but you got to vote people in or vote people out. That's how it is heard. It is one of the main areas that many people in power right now don't want you to exercise. There's a reason they don't want you to exercise it. It's because it has so much power to it. And if you can't, for some reason, vote because those votes have not been restored, make sure your mama, your sister, your grandma, your neighbor, and everybody else goes for you. That's where that voice is truly heard. We need to make sure that we have judges that are fair judges, that are reasonable judges. Guess what? They're on the ballot too. There's a site, and Kitty, I can share it. It's pbcjudicialelections.com. If I can share my screen real quick, I can show people what it looks like. I know I'm using my 2 seconds, but I don't know if I can show. I can't. Oh, you disabled the share screening. Anyway, if you go to that site, pbcjudicialelections.com, I have no ownership in that whatsoever, but it will give you the information of the judges who are on the ballot. These are people who make the ultimate decisions about our lives, make the ultimate decisions about whether or not the police is going to go to trial, have a trial, reverse decisions, or what happens. That's where that goes. You also have congressional races coming up for the House, Florida Senate, US House, US Senate. Each one of those is key because they all address the needs that we say that we're crying about, that we want for justice. If you don't know who these people are, you don't have a circle of friends who can give you that information, just give me a call. I will be glad to sit down and help. Glad, 561-655-9279. That is for this issue. I'm here.
Thank you. And Nancy Shannon, thank you, Nancy. She put the PBC Collections org in the feed, so that information is in there. All right, closing arguments from Mr. Sims.
Unmute, Chief.
Chief, unmute yourself.
Thought I did. You hear me now? I think, you can hear me? Okay. I think every resident should meet and know the chief of their municipality, county, state, or whatever it may be. Establish meetings regarding policy services, whether you have a use of force policy, body worn camera, early warning systems. Do you even conduct community policing? Because if you want to affect change, you have to get engaged and stay engaged. Be willing to step outside of your comfort zones. If you want change, you have to in the change process. And I was a little disappointed when Attorney Ferguson said someone said they don't care about policy. That's unfortunate because that's where change is going to take place. So you have to get involved in the legislation, in the politics of your municipality.
I said nobody cares about policy.
Your county.
I think you might have misheard me on that one.
Yeah. But with that being said, well, I could have misunderstood you. If I did, I apologize for that. That's what I thought I heard. Get involved in what's taking place in your community. You can't go home each and every day and pull the blinds down and think everything will be okay when you come outside the following day. And don't get upset when policies are put in place that you have no idea about because you haven't taken upon yourself to get involved in the process. Get involved, stay involved, and advocate for change. If you think change is necessary, do everything within your power, galvanize with other people if necessary to help affect that change. That's the only way you're gonna impact in any way, form, or fashion the culture, not only of law enforcement, any other disservices you think you're receiving in your municipality. I'm done.
All right, thank you. All right, so we are gonna, well, of course, I'm gonna close, but we're gonna close with the senator's final arguments.
Thank you, Kitty London. What I can tell you, I want to do this and say this. This is very, very important. I've got so many of my friends and colleagues on this call who I interact with on a very frequent basis. You've got the chief of the Delray Beach Police, Chief Sims. You've got a very strong activist in Mr. Chuck Ridley. You've got one of my good friends and somebody who I talk to about issues and policies, Edwin Ferguson. You've got Attorney Edwin Ferguson. You've got Attorney Celicia Smith Gordon, and you've got Mayor Masters, people who I've had opportunity to break bread with, people who I've talked to, people who I've also used for counsel for myself, the images that people see. I'm a planner, and the father of modern day planning, who we call Daniel Burnham, says that make no little plans, for they lack the power to make men's blood boil. There are people watching on this video tonight who see us in these positions, but we are the images that they can see that they can be. You can't be what you can't see, but we are visible, we are present in our community, and we are in these positions, which means you can do the same thing. I'm telling you, if a little boy from Riviera Beach who grew up with a mother who was disabled and a father who worked construction, and a lot of times we had to figure it out. When it rained, my dad didn't work those days. And this wasn't that long ago. If I can grow up, get a degree from FAMU, get a degree from Florida State University that they paid for, and then become a planner and then a state representative to a state senator, if I can do it, then you can do it. Trust and believe there's nothing And I mean nothing more powerful than the passionate, committed mind. Don't aim low. Most people fail. Les Brown says not because they aim high and miss, it's because they aim low and hit. Let's go. Look at us. We're here. This is the power. If we can do it, you can do it.
I love it how you end with power, because this is truly the people of power. So I want to thank everybody. I know we're in our new normal right now. We normally would be together, but we are, doing the unmutes, the Zooms from the bad connection. But guess what? We've made today possible. And I want to thank each and every one of you. You all made a recipe for a great panel, a great discussion. I know we have so much more that we can talk about because we're still going through this. So we turn on the TV, we're going to go through more. So we just want to make sure that if you're listening, please make sure you share the video, let people know that we are talking, because I'm one of those people who will ask, who's talking about it? Who's doing this? Who's doing that? Because we need the representation in our communities to let people know that we have not forgot about you. And we do have leaders who will sit down and discuss the matters that truly are important to us. So I want to again thank everybody who joined us tonight. Thank you everybody who was on the live. If you heard the people, I could not answer every question. So everybody is tagged on here. I would ask the panelists on your downtime, if you can go through the video, if there's some things that you can answer, please make sure you answer them, so we can let the people know that we do care about what they're saying on the live. So I want to thank everybody. I know we're gone over, but it's been a great night. We will have more of these conversations, and I just want to say thank you. You all have been amazing, 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 amazing. Thank you so much. So we're going to end. Thank you with a thumbs up. And again, make sure everyone, please make sure you share, and we will have more of these topics. Stay tuned for the Legal Edition Part 3. I have not picked the panel yet, but they will be just as awesome as all the panelists that I've chosen so far. So again, have a great night, everybody. Cheese them, stay safe. We love you all. Have a great night. Bye-bye.
Take care. All right.